Hi there, I'm Paul Humphries from OMD and you're watching liveprog.
A band that had massive hits in the 80s. A band that I grew up with. A band I never thought I'd ever see live on stage. A band I never thought I'd ever interview. And a band I never expected to review. Funny how life can change, because I have seen the band live and I have done an interview with them. So that makes 2 out of 3. And now we'll make it 3 out of 3, because here I have Orchestral Manoeuvres in the Dark, or OMD, English Electric. This is an absolute dream, to have seen the band live on stage for the very first time in my life, but also to have an interview with them, which was really fantastic. I'm not going to give you the full history of the band, just Wikipedia the band or Google the band and read it for yourself. But a few things need to be mentioned in this review. In 1986, Paul Humphries and Andy McCluskey parted ways. Andy McCluskey continued OMD and Paul Humphries went to do some other things. In 1996, Andy McCluskey retired OMD. He stopped and that was the end of it. However, 14 years later, OMD was back. Not just on stage, but they completely reformed in the original lineup. And 24 years after Andy and Paul broke up, they got back together and released a new OMD album, History of Modern. And this album was released so very well that the band knew there was still a place for them in the music stage, so they continued, and now we have a second album after the reformation, English Electric. I couldn't be happier to see the band back. I have listened to History of Modern and I wish I had known before, because I would have loved to review that album, because it is a fantastic album. And what's very important is with that album it is very clear that OMD still has something to offer. They are not a clone of themselves, they are not repeating themselves, but they have something new and something fresh to offer. And the same is with English Electric. It is so great to hear the band are in fantastic musical shape. They really sound fresh, they sound inspired again, you know, bringing absolutely fantastic music. A couple of things that I definitely like about the album is, first of all, the fact that they still have retained that characteristic, familiar OMD sound. A couple of tracks could have been, well, from the 80s, but they are here, they are on this album, and I'm pretty sure that if we move a couple of tracks from this album back into the 80s, release them as a single, they would have been #1 hits. Absolutely, because this is a fantastic album. But it's nice to see the change in the band. If you have seen the interview I did with Paul Humphries, he told a little bit about the biggest change that is between OMD in the past and OMD these days. Back in the 80s and also in the 90s, they were kind of governed by the record label. But with this one, English Electric, they do OMD on their own terms. They do what they want to do. And that is something you hear in the music. That's why it sounds so fresh, and that's why it sounds so inspired. And that's why they make a nice balance between pop music and electronic music. Because when they started out back in the late 70s, they were pioneers. They were very progressive, because they started making music that basically nobody made. So that was a bold step from them. Unfortunately, also due to the pressure of the record label, they kind of turned into sort of a hit machine. It all sounded very smooth and they kind of lost their experimental edge. And that is something they try to reclaim with this album. They try to go back to that experimental part again. And that is what you definitely see in the music.
Helen of Troy, it got so strong. Does that make you right? Make me wrong? Because I
tracks that you find on this album, English Electric, there are a couple of tracks that are definitely experimental electronic music. The opener, for example, a small introduction to the album Please Remain Seated, with robot voices, with electronic sounds. That is something they like to do. One of my favorite parts, which is the longest electronic piece on the album, is The Future Will Be Silent. Listen to it and wow, that is absolutely one of the favorite pieces on this album. So that is fantastic. But also, and that's something, wow, it blew me away, but not entirely. Metroland, the first actual track on the album. This is something they already posted on YouTube as a sort of introduction, and well, these days there are charts, but not as they used to be in the 80s and the 90s. I think YouTube are the new charts these days. Well, they posted the first track of the album Metroland on YouTube, and the first time I heard it, I was a bit skeptical because it had that driving, pumping bass in the music. But I kept on listening to it, and steadily it started to grow on me, and I gotta say, I think it's a fantastic song. And it holds a lot more than just a simple beat and a simple pop tune. Just listen to it. Something that track shows, and that is something you see throughout the whole album, is how fantastic Andy McCluskey's voice still is. After all these years, after the fact that they've been, well, doing other things for many years, and now they're back, he still has a very amazing, powerful and passionate voice. I've always loved his vocals, and I'm very happy to hear that. Well, basically, it is as if time had stood still on his voice. And the cool thing is, I mean, you could say, yeah, but it's a studio, you know, they have tricks to enhance that. I have seen the band live. I have seen Andy on stage going crazy, dancing, singing, and he still has incredible power in his voice. So he still can do it. The whole band still can do it. The cool thing is, you know, they are back in the original lineup. The lineup they started with back in the late 70s, early 80s. The period that they had their best moments, their best albums were released back then. This one is definitely on par with that. You know, if you look at probably what's considered their best album, Architecture and Morality, well, you can place this one next to it because it is just as good.
She steals your soul and kissing the machine.
Fantastic songs on it. There are songs on it that really tell you, wow, this is OMD. If you listen to Night Café, from the moment that song starts, even if you don't know this album, you know, wow, this is OMD. Hey, whoa, this is different. It's not from the old days. Is it a new song? Absolutely, it is a new song. A fantastic album. A second track they also put out on YouTube is Dresden, with a cool video as well. Again, a stunning song. The electronic parts, you know, you have the songs that really have the OMD sound. You also have some songs that have a more electronic, more experimental side. Kissing the Machine is one of them, and there are two interesting facts to say about that song. First of all, the song was co-written by Karl Bartos. Now, as proggers, that name may or may not sound a bell. As electronic music fans, you should know who that is, because he has played a very important part in the German band Kraftwerk for many years. Also, the best years of that band, probably. And of course, Kraftwerk was the band that inspired OMD to take the course they have taken and made the music, well, we now still have and we still can enjoy from the 80s. Another person guesting on that song, Kissing the Machine, is Claudia Brücken. That may not ring a bell, but also back in the 80s, 90s, there was a band called Propaganda, and she was the singer of that. And it's interesting, after Andy and Paul split up, Paul Humphries worked with Claudia Brücken for a while in the band 1-2. So they have a connection with each other, and it all comes together on this album. So that makes this album, well, very special in, you know, all the history that comes together in this, but not just the history, also the future, because this album shows that OMD still has a lot of fantastic music to offer. They had a lot of fun performing. I had a lot of fun talking to them. I hope that they will keep on going for as long as they like it. That's what they found very important. But for now, I am very happy that they are back, stronger than ever, reunited, rejuvenated, very fresh and inspired. So English Electric by OMD, I can only recommend it.